Buenas, buenas. Welcome to Music Marketing TV. I'm Kevin Ochoa, and today we're going to be talking about Toxic Biohazard, a very special synthesizer. That's because while it has an FM engine, it has physical modeling modules. For example, the oscillators, the filters, and the EQ, along with various other modules, work through physical modeling. That means that while we're going to have the best of the digital world, it's still going to have that warmer character of the analog world. And while I explain how Toxic works, I'm going to break down and create sounds at the same time. So we're going to learn how to make all these sounds today. Let's begin with the brand new, refreshed Toxic. So the way this works is that we have oscillators, not just operators like in FM synthesizers. We just have oscillators. We can turn them on and off just by clicking on them. As you can see, when it turns on, it's bright. We can select different waveforms by selecting the name, and we have a list of waveforms. We have sine waves, or traditional waves, or DX7 inspired waves, noise waves, and some gates for rhythmic modulations. So let me get a saw wave to explain the rest of the parameters here. So we have pitch, which goes up 99 and down 99, which is really helpful for FM synthesis. And we also have a detune, which goes up 99 cents and down 99 cents. We have phase control, and we can also have it free running. And we have something that's very special to Toxic. It's per oscillator envelopes. That means that every single oscillator can have its own particular ADSR and also initialize. So that this is great for percussion sounds and velocity. So once you hit your keyboard, you can have different velocities for every single oscillator. And we also have frequency offset, which is very helpful for when you're creating FM sounds. Now, with this, I'm gonna go ahead and explain the matrix. I'm gonna use the noise, and I'm gonna select a noise on this other oscillator, oscillator 4. Make sure it's a different one. Now I'm gonna turn this on, and you can't hear noise 4 at this point in time. That's because I haven't turned on the mixer, which I don't want to do because at this point, what I need to do is use oscillator 4 to modulate oscillator 1. So I'm gonna turn it on, and I'm gonna go to my matrix. So the matrix has my carriers on the left-hand side and my modulators on the right, on the top. So I'm gonna go to noise 4, and I'm gonna have it modulate oscillator 1. And at this point, you probably, why are creating this really weird sound that just sounds like digital noise? Well, that's because if you push this all the way up and detune this, you start to lose definition of those specific frequencies. And once I change the pitch, you start creating just almost regular type of noise like you would in almost any regular synthesizer. Okay, that's pretty good for what I want. I'm gonna bring down this sustain over here, which over here is our master ADSR. Bring that down and bring down the decay as well. If you guys can kind of hear that, that's starting to sound like a traditional synthesized hi-hat. Now, if we want to continue on with this and I keep adding to the sound, we can turn this into a snare. If we turn on this sine on oscillator 2, now I can't hear that sine wave. That's because I have to go to the mix right here and turn that on. I can hear that. And now I want to modulate. And I want to specifically modulate the pitch on this. And you do so by going down here to the master pitch modulation. So we can see that we can modulate this via LFO2. If we leave the sustain on. However, we don't want that for this snare, so we're going to remove that, and we're going to use master pitch modulation with via the filter. So you see, as soon as I turn this up, the filter sustain is all the way up. So I need to bring that down, bring down the release, and bring down the decay. And now we're getting a much tighter sound. I'm going to bring down the decay a little bit more. Something around there. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we can control every single oscillator. So that means I can come back to the first one and decrease the sustain and decrease the decay. We pull that release a little bit down. And we have a much tighter snare now. To finish this sound off, I'm going to go to the EQ and add some 4K. And some 500. Now, the cool thing about having Toxic is that while that snare is really high pitch right now, I can tune it to my needs because I'm synthesizing this sound from the ground up. Toxic is not just good for percussive hits and percussive sounds. You could also use it to create stabs, as I did with this synth over here. And that's a very smooth Supersaw stab. Along with the filtering, it's a very smooth filter because it's physically modeled. Now, for me, I like to test synthesizers using Supersaws because I feel that a Supersaw is a very intimate thing. For example, the Supersaw on the Prophet 5 will sound much more brittle, and when you compare it to the one on the Jupiter, it's going to sound much more lush. That's not to say that the Prophet 5's Supersaw is weak, but rather that it has a different flavor. And the thing with Toxic is that instead of having that digital feel, it's really warm sounding. So I'm going to go ahead and recreate this patch really quickly. So I'm going to go back into the options, reset program. And the way I did this is, again, thanks to the fact that I have 6 oscillators right in front of me. So I'm going to use a saw wave for most of these really quickly. And I'm going to use this first saw over here to be my higher saw. So once I turn these on, and I'm going to add a sub oscillator with a triangle wave. Turn this on and pitch this down an octave. Now I have a much wider spectrum. I'm going to increase the voicing, increase the unison detune, and the pan. I'm also going to go to the second and third oscillator and detune them a bit from each other. So now we have a very similar sound to this one. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the filter, decrease the sustain and release. Actually give it a little release. Increase the amount and select this to be a low pass filter. A cool thing about Toxic is that this filter is actually based on, according to the manual, a little gray box. That means that most likely it's based on the 303, which I'll get to in a little bit. Now over here we have our effects. I'm going to go into this one and select reverb. I'm going to sync it to the time. And I'm going to go to delay and sync that as well. Fourths, decrease the mix. As you can hear, it's super easy to make these sounds, and I didn't have to dig into any subfolders. So it's just super quick to create sounds here. Now I'm going to recreate this final sound that I had up here. So basically, this is just a sequence, and that's because we have a sequence right here. Under the modulation section, there's MIDI, which lets us control parameters via MIDI. So this is like our mod in a traditional synth. And we have a sequencer right here. And this functions very, very simply as any other traditional sequencer would. So we have our notation right here. So if I change it, it changes the note really, really quickly. There's a sustain as well. So if I remove that, it will play another note instead of playing the continued note. Super simple to use. And I can select the number of steps and play them. Or if I turn this knob off, now I can only hit it with my keyboard and create melodies with my keyboard. But for this example, we need to have this on, and we need to go back to having this be sustained. There we go. Now for this sound, what I did was I selected a saw wave. I went to the low pass filter. I increased the attack a little bit, reduced the decay, and brought the sustain down so I can have those little squelches you do in the 303. And also use the drive up here to just give some distortion to the sound. So while this tech is really snappy, let's bring this down to halftime. You can hear how smooth that filter is, even though we have a sequencer just snapping and stepping really quickly. I also turn on this gate over here. So instead of me modulating this via the cutoff, I could just have this do a little stepping on it. I can really hear that resonance really chirps. So today we covered the basics on Toxic Biohazard, such as how the FM matrix works, its sequencer, and we also touched upon the physical modeling models such as the oscillator, the filter, and the EQ. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'm Kevin Ochoa with Music Marketing TV, and I'll catch you guys next time.